Welcome to Manager Tools. How to Action Engagement Survey Results, Chapter 2, Response and Conflicts. The questions this cast answers are, how should I respond to my engagement survey results? What should I do with my scores on an engagement survey? And how can I improve my engagement survey results? Roughly once a quarter, we host an event in person with our Effective Hiring Manager content offer. This quarter, it's August 8th, 9th, and 10th in Chicago. Come out to Chicago, sign up for 1, 2, or 3 days, Effective Hiring, Effective Manager, and Effective Communicator events. Chicago, August 8th, 9th, and 10th. Sign up at manager-tools.com/training. Okay, how to action engagement survey results, but Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Last time, we talked about dimensions, and this time we're talking about response and conflicts. Now, those of you that have been with us for a while will know that in our previous engagement guidance, we've described the history and our concerns with engagement as an overall concept. If you've not listened to that previous guidance, you're going to want to go back and listen to it. It's really the foundation of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
We also, in previous guidance, gave you an overview to help you and your team get ready to answer the survey itself. In this guidance, though, this is the aftermath in this guidance. We're going to tell you how to take action on the results you're going to get from your direct and the overall organization's responses by taking an actual engagement survey, one that's been available to us in 2023, and addressing the over 140 questions it asks to give you specific guidance on what to do and how and why.
So today, second chapter of the guidance, we'll give you a general approach and address potential conflicts that occur. I do see them as slightly political. Maybe that's...
Don't disagree.
Yeah. So, okay. Potential conflicts between what you might do for your team and what the organization may ask all managers to address. That looks like, in terms of our content today, a general approach to a manager's response, and then what are we going to do about conflicting responses? So starting with general approach to a manager's response, like what as effective managers should we do in these situations?
And it's confusing because we feel the pressure, right? By our organization, by our manager, by our manager's manager, and their manager. There's a bunch of people who are pushing on this initiative because, let's face it, we paid a bunch of money for these people to come in, survey all of our staff. We spent salary dollars on all of the people who spent time filling out 140 questions.
Oof.
On the back end, there's definitely a desire to do something with the results here.
Right.
First off, as a manager, you can ignore change guidance from your leadership and focus on your own team's survey results. Then, as time permits, and lack of conflicts make it possible for you, incorporate your chain of leadership's guidance for new behaviors.
We got a two-pronged approach, and that's first.
This doesn't sound like something we'd normally recommend, does it?
No, it really doesn't. We're pretty careful about guidance that would put you in conflict with leadership. Specifically, usually we talk about, don't put yourself in a position for your boss to be frustrated with you or like in conflict with you. So, okay, usually we recommend acquiescence to leadership guidance. We believe you're part of an organization. If you work, especially in the States, if you work at an organization, you signed up to work at that organization.
Yeah, it's you volunteered to go there and get paid.
Right. And so your then obligation includes honoring their requests of you.
Yep.
We talk a lot about murdering the unchosen alternative and professional subordination. And if you remember, we have talked about the nature of engagement surveys and their algorithmic shenanigans, as we'll call them, because shenanigans is a
great word. It's just a good one. You should use it.
It's also a really sweet way of describing it. Your organization's results and the response to these results may very well differ notably from what you might glean from your team's survey responses, in that your team may have answered the questions differently than the other people in the organization. Sure, data in aggregate, helpful. Data specifically about you and your behaviors, more helpful.
More helpful. I think in chapter 1, the previous chapter of this guidance, we talked about the fact that if you're a manager tools manager, you're in the top 10% of people leaders, which means your personal data, your team's data could be wildly different from the organization. If you're a manager tools manager, this is even more likely to be the case than for anyone else because of all of the activities you're engaged in, one-on-ones, delegation, all of the things that you're doing, which ensure that you're leading your people in a good way, a good, successful, effective way. And as we mentioned earlier, the guidance coming out of your overall leadership team might suggest you do exactly the opposite of what you've been doing that led you to your own team's high scores in the area your organization got generally low scores overall.
Yeah, you got to see your own team's responses.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're at the mercy of everybody else's poor leadership, management.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, imagine too, from the perspective of like, if you're here because a lot of people are listening because their boss also listens, right? Your boss listens to manager tools, you listen to manager tools. That could be a thing that's happening. You might then find that even your boss's behavior they're really helpful. They're positive.
Yeah.
They're useful. You have one-on-ones. Would you want your boss to have to change his behavior or her behavior based on what the survey says is appropriate if you know that your boss is doing a good job managing his team? I mean, we talk a lot about the middleman test, and I find that really, really useful.
Yeah.
In this case, though, I almost think about, should we really be engaging with these results if they're not accurate to us?
Right. And they may not be accurate to us specifically.
Exactly. And and I just, imagine if your boss said, hey, if you really think your boss is doing a good job, if you enjoy them, if they're doing the right stuff, and then he says, hey, I have to change my stuff because the company says because the company got low scores. It's like, dude, that's not a good way to proceed.
Doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't. So we got to dig into your own team's response. If you're a director, we do recommend you listen to our guidance and executive tools about how to lead a response to a survey.
Because you may be asked to lead it, whether or not you think that this is the right path for your organization.
Yep.
And that's an area we would recommend you subordinate yourself.
Yeah. Different guidance. But in terms of just your own team's response, if you're a manager, the first step in doing that is identifying areas of strength relative to your organization and making sure not to engage in any behaviors that will damage your high scores in those areas.
Right.
So start there. Because you have enough to do with the rest of your work and addressing one or two areas that you could use some improvement without trying to take on every area of the survey, attempting and then failing inevitably because it's too much to make yourself the first ever embodiment of a perfect manager.
Right. You have enough to do. You have a job.
There's no perfect manager. But I'll go back to what we talk about, managing teams versus individuals. Every individual person wants something slightly different. And so there's never going to be a perfect manager because there's humans. Right. Because management is a system with humans. Any system with humans is flawed. So
Exactly.
Good. So you dig in, you look for areas of strength.
Yeah, you look for areas of strength so that
Don't
you
change
can
the good stuff.
Yeah, find areas where you can commit to not do anything because your team's individual scores are high in those areas.
Yeah, don't attempt to address all areas where you're below the organization's averages and benchmarks.
No, don't. Again, you have enough to do. You have enough to do. And remember that work has to get done leading to results. And actions to address engagement score outcomes are not seen as organizational results. They're not.
Well, because they're not organizational results.
They're not getting the work done. They're leading the people. Results and retention, which is more important.
We also know that people aren't measuring their managerial behaviors very much. Right. They're really not.
They're really not.
We know this. We ask people to measure their one-on-ones and they don't. So
Exactly.
And all we ask them to do is count them. So that it's not that hard. Okay. So then what we do recommend that you do is choose 1 or 2 areas where your scores suggest you can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you believe that difference will make a difference with your team and its
Yes.
results and retention. Not just, oh, I can make a difference here. If you don't think it's going to help results and retention, perhaps it's not a place to apply your will or behavior.
Mm-hmm. You can't address every single thing. So
right.
If you take some actions in these specific areas where you think you can move the dial, right? You can influence positively results and retention. And those will actually bear fruit while being efficient and sustainable practices for your organization. At some point, 3 to 6 months from now, you can then decide to take on 1 or 2 more areas. Again, we talked a little bit about chunking in our previous guidance, right? Break it down. Choose 1 or 2 to start with. And then if you see movement in those areas, good. Maintain over there and choose 1 or 2 more so that you can do a little bit more at a time without overwhelming yourself and your team and doing activities that will lead to poor results because everyone's focused on an activity or objective that doesn't bring in organizational results. And folks, all the while, if you're getting the impression that your company isn't going to put a lot of emphasis on engagement responses, choose only 1 area to address.
Yeah, choose wisely, y'all.
Yeah.
Don't overwhelm yourself. If you don't see them making a bunch of headway or there's not a lot of inertia around this, perhaps you should also choose not to engage in a lot of inertia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Just like a pro tip there. I've got to stop saying that. Okay. Maybe then though, you're wondering, okay, how do I tell if my engagement survey is going to be a big deal? Is my organization going to create this inertia? Is it, going to come to, hey, how much did you do for the engagement survey result on your performance review, for example? We've got a hack, a decision hack, which I love decision hacks. If your company's overall numbers aren't great and or the economy looks to be heading into a recession or is in a recession, your company isn't going to put a lot of emphasis on engagement responses.
Yeah.
Period. And you can certainly ask your boss or other colleagues who might have a sense of the corporate survey zeitgeist if there's going to be a lot of inertia. However, if the overall numbers aren't great or the economy is sliding or slid, there's not going to be a lot of work around this.
No. And folks, let's remember that the purchasing of an engagement survey from a vendor, the scheduling that and bringing them in to send out all these questions, the answering of the questions, the analysis of the data, the presenting of the data, this is going to take some time. So it could even be that the parties involved in bringing in this organization, this vendor to do an engagement survey, those executives, let's say, those C-suite individuals who thought this was a good idea, might not even work here anymore. This might have, this entire initiative could have started so long ago that it's no longer the focus of your organization because we had an overall leadership change. There could be a lot of things that make it such that your organization is now looking at results that we don't really care about because we started this process so long ago that, to Kate's point, now the economy's changed. Now leadership has changed. A lot of the reasons we began this could have changed.
Yeah.
And we're no longer focusing on it. So if you're wondering what specific actions to take in certain areas, that's what the rest of the guidance is about. We're going to go through
upcoming chapters.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to go through one of the popular engagement surveys question by question so that we can make specific actionable recommendations. And if you've been listening to us for any length of time, that's kind of what we do. And we're going to come up with those specific actionable recommendations for all of the questions. So if you are in a place where your organization has done this and you're expected to do something about it, you know what the to do about it is. Are you looking for a way to stay motivated and focused on your goals? Bill Madden can help. His session at last year's M conference about leadership and fortitude taught us how to stay motivated and focused on our goals even when faced with challenges and setbacks. And fortunately for you, you can watch it on video as part of the Executive Outlook video product. So during this summer, while everyone else is kicking back, you can be getting the shot in the arm you need. Find Bill's secrets at manager-tools.com/products under the Executive Outlook video series.
What about conflicting responses? That's what we want to help out with now. What happens if the company wants you working on improving category 1 and your specific results say actually category 2 is where you get the most improvement on a future survey and in future results and retentions? Then, okay, you've got a focus conflict.
Yeah. Or what if the company
wants you... Where should you apply your work?
Yeah, where should you apply your efforts? Yeah, exactly. And what if the company wants you to take action on X in category 1, but you believe, based on our guidance or guidance you've got elsewhere, that you'd like to address instead on, or you'd like to focus instead on Y to address category 1, agreed upon category, but a different approach to it. Now, this is a tactic conflict.
Yeah. For focus conflicts, ask yourself whether you can accomplish both what the company wants you to do as well as what you want to do. Maybe the actions the company wants you to take are pretty simple, and the actions we recommend are specific and clear enough that you can do both. You think you can do both, and that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Even sometimes when I go to organizations, they say things like, oh, well, we really want to address collaboration. It's like, oh, guess what? This guidance, one-on-ones, coaching, already focuses on collaboration. So can it apply to both places? So in a focus conflict, can you accomplish both what the company wants you to do and what you want to do? Because that could be an approach. But if you don't think you can do both, you have an issue.
Exactly. First, you need to assess whether you have to. Because again, to a previous point, if your organization doesn't appear to be putting much energy into the response phase of the survey, and many don't, interestingly enough, you may be able to get away with not doing whatever you're hearing about from on high. Right? You could get away with not doing anything.
Maybe. And it's a judgment call. If it's specific stuff, then maybe you have less risk or more risk. But if you're not getting dates, specific guidance, you really might not have to do anything.
Yeah.
If your boss doesn't say anything or host a meeting where the organization's plans are detailed, you really might not have to take any action on the company's area of focus. So it's possible that it just kind of fizzles.
Yeah, exactly. And in a surprising number of cases, considering the amount of money your organization paid to get this information from the people that work there. But if you see this instead as a tactic conflict, that is, you agree upon the category, but your approach is different than what the organization or your boss is recommending, it's probably best to take both actions, as long as you don't believe that one action will in turn cancel out the other. But again, it's a judgment call, depending upon political winds and your belief in the importance of the category and the actions you'd want to take. And we guess that in most instances, a manager tools manager will be able to take whatever actions they deem reasonable without too much pressure from above. Because again,
that's our assumption.
Yeah.
That there's trust and it's clear that you're successful and
exactly. Your team's scores, maybe not the organization, but your team's scores are likely higher than others within the organization, which gives you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of flexibility in terms of putting into practice some of these recommendations. But if you do get into a tactic conflict with your boss and you worry that the organization's tactics are destructive to your approach as a manager, it may be worth having a meeting with your boss to make a case for your approach. Now, you're probably going to have to be willing to lose that fight if it comes to it, right? But being willing to lose the fight doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. We'd still recommend you go and you try and make your case to your manager about why that approach is not the approach you think you and your team ought to take. And if you do lose, do your best to quietly pursue your own tactic while satisfying whatever it is your boss and your organization is doing.
Mm-hmm.
An example I think of in that one is, what if they come back and they say, we want you to stop doing one-on-ones and instead do team meetings?
You could do both.
You could do both. Exactly. We'd recommend you'd still quietly do your one-on-ones, maybe even change the name of them.
Yeah.
Weekly touch point or weekly tag up. Exactly. And still fulfill those meetings while also doing a team meeting that is imposed upon you by your organization. That would be an example.
Yeah. That's the thing that like, we have to increase collaboration. It's like, well, I can do that in my one-on-one.
Yeah.
Or, I have to focus on adjusting bandwidth. Great. Delegation, one-on-one. Awesome. You have to do performance communication. Oh, great. Feedback. There's a lot of different ways that this can be applied.
Yeah.
And I would suggest a lot of the people involved in this response are going to do things and not measure them. They're going to say, I'm going to do X, and then it's not going to get measured. So at the end of this, it's possible that at some point somebody says, did you, like performance review time, right? Somebody says, did you respond and how to the engagement survey results? And the answer is yes. And I did these things.
Mm-hmm.
And because everyone else isn't going to have any measurement, honestly, like,
right?
They're not going to come down there and say, how many team meetings did you have? It's doubtful.
Right. It's doubtful.
So any response, unlikely to be tracked by other managers, which means there's probably not a lot of onus for y'all to engage with some of this stuff. Okay, tactic conflict.
Yes. If there are two factors that may help you with a tactic conflict, first, your organization's guidance will be unactionable.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? If they have recommendations, they're really likely to be vague, non-behavioral. Like, do things like Kate mentioned, collaborate more, right? Build trust, connect professionally, create opportunities for dialogue. And these things are on their face impossible to do. There's no action in that. So you won't be held accountable for doing things that can't be done.
Right. You can, though, honestly, do something and say, this is how I did that. You can choose a behavior and say, this is how I did that.
Exactly.
And this is part of why we find that this is part of why speaking to this is actually really important, y'all, because our guidance is specific and actionable. And in so many cases, it is closely related to the organization's jabber talk, unimplementable, unmeasurable, just I can't even use the word guidance. We like when we say build trust, connect professionally, create opportunities for dialogue. We say that because all of them could be satisfied by beginning to conduct one-on-ones or refreshing your one-on-one meetings.
Exactly.
And then it could be measured, which is great because you'll have
this is how many
this
happened.
Data. This is it. Like,
you've got measures built in because they're occurring on a weekly basis. And this leads us then to perhaps our most blatantly political guidance about engagement survey results. Do not be afraid to take actions we recommend, but report to your boss and organization about them, these behaviors, using the language your organization uses.
Right.
So, for example, if your organization's trust category scores are low, you might hear or read that you should build trust, connect professionally, and create opportunities for dialogue. And you, as a manager, tools manager, would know this is completely non-actionable nonsense language, and it's fully avoidant of any and all accountability on behalf of the person. But you'd also know that engaging in manager tools one-on-ones, about which we have detailed guidance so you don't have to create anything on your own, would be a perfect answer to that problem. So that's that. We'd recommend that you follow our guidance, do one-on-ones, and brief your boss or whomever asks about it by talking about your actions while showing that it addresses the organization's concerns by using their nonsense language wherever possible. Essentially, that's what I'm saying.
Buzzwords.
Exactly. Use their buzzwords to prove that what you're doing, one-on-ones, indeed helps people connect professionally and create opportunities for dialogue and build trust.
Right. It could, this is what it sounds like. Regarding the company's concern relative to low scores in the trust category, I will be conducting weekly one-on-one meetings with each of my directs. One-on-ones are highly regarded with a widely practiced set of guidelines for managers that do build trust. I will be briefing my team next week regarding the purpose and practice, making clear that our goal will be to connect professionally regularly. I'll provide weekly opportunities for each team member to create dialogue in these meetings. And after briefing my team and answering their questions, I will start conducting these meetings July 1st.
Exactly. I mean, you're doing the same thing. The thing we recommend you do, you're just talking to your boss in a language they understand. Communication is what the listener does.
If you're already doing one-on-ones, you would say something about, I will be briefing my team next week regarding the company's concern relative to low scores in the trust category on how our one-on-ones will be used to help create more trust and dialogue. Mm-hmm. And so like you're going to brief your team and just continue doing exactly what you're already doing.
Yeah.
That checks the box.
Right.
Because genuinely, honestly, sometimes it's really useful simply to look for opportunities to talk about the actions you're taking using the language, which is often unactionable, of the organization or the survey or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. People suggest things and you respond with, well, this is what I am doing. Mm-hmm. Because when there's things like build trust, there's a lot of different ways you can do that.
Yeah, there absolutely are.
So if you've got a response, which is more than what a lot of people will have, then you are doing something. And you might not even need to be doing something. However, again, it's not politically savvy to suggest that you don't need to be doing something.
Right. Or at least communicate that the thing that you are doing, one-on-ones in this case, is indeed achieving the goals they want to achieve. The organization wants to achieve. Your manager wants you to achieve because of the engagement survey results. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Just speak to them the way they want to be spoken to. That's exactly it. Exactly.
Chapter 2.
That was chapter 2. All right. And in this chapter, we recommended ways to respond to your survey results and showed you ways to address those potential conflict areas between what you need to do for your team versus what the organization might be asking overall managers to do within the organization. And those things are different. Mm-hmm. And in our next chapters, we're going to go through the over 100 questions on an actual engagement survey so that we can walk you all through more actionable guidance in terms of how to increase those individual scores in those areas, given you or your organization received low engagement survey results in any of the categories for any of the questions.
All right. That's it for today, y'all. See you next time. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Kate. Bye.